I have a model called the 5 Elements of Entrepreneurship. It's borrowed from Chinese 5-element theory, and this comes from my study of martial arts and Qigong. 5-element theory permeates Chinese culture, from martial arts to medical systems, to spiritual systems, to food, music, etc. And the 5 elements in the classic Chinese model is fire, earth, water, metal, and wood. And it's all about the constitution of those elements in any given thing and how those elements are balanced, the mixture and the balance of those. Borrowing upon that, I identified 5 elements of entrepreneurship that lead to success. And that is passion. Passion leads to discipline. Discipline leads to expertise. Expertise leads to confidence. And confidence leads to faith.
This is the Entrepreneurs United podcast with your hosts, John St. Pierre and Rich Hoffman.
Hey, entrepreneurs, happy to bring to you Craig Cooke, who's an author and speaker, consultant, and an advisor himself, having been a CEO of multiple businesses. Craig, you have a book, Business Kung Fu. What made you think to put those 2 words together in your book? And tell us just a little bit about it.
Oh, thanks, Rich. And thank you, John, also for having me here today. Excited to share with you and your audience. And to answer your question, I studied Chinese Kung Fu when I was age 17 to 25, really intensely. And I still study today. It's a mixture of martial arts. But through those learnings, I took those principles and applied it to actually running my company that I started at age 25. So there's the mindset aspect, but then a lot of other learnings and principles that I took from that and applied it to the company. So the book is really just capturing that.
Yeah. Craig, one of the things I see is you work with leadership, brand, and marketing is really your core competency. And we usually wait till the end of the episode to say, okay, if there's one message you have for entrepreneurs in your subject of expertise that they must know, and we wait till the end to ask that question, but our listeners want to know, like right now, give us the meat. What's the one message you would have for entrepreneurs in your area of expertise that can make the most amount of impact in their lives or business?
The personal lives and professional lives are intertwined. And there could be all the aspects of business and making money and all that great stuff, which is all great. But one huge lesson for me in my journey was making sure that you prioritize your self-care. Huge lesson I learned, and we could get into why. But I have a saying in my book, be of service to self so you can be of service to others for a lifetime.
Love that. Self-care is not selfish, right?
That's right.
Richie and I have talked about that a lot.
And the assumption is you came across that because you were not caring for yourself enough. And usually in our experience, what happens is when someone doesn't do that, life has a way of forcing unpleasant consequences on people in areas that are neglected. Would you mind sharing with us a touch of your story about maybe how life did that to you?
Sure. You're spot on. That's what happened to me. So when I started my company at age 25, I was in great shape from all the martial arts training that I was doing. I was also strength training, lifting weights in the gym, and just great shape. So started the company, went all in, 1,000%, not just 100, but say 1,000% exponential. And 10 years later, I found myself at the opposite end of health, overweight, and just not taking care of myself. And let's fast forward another several years. As I was going into my early 40s, I found myself being really tired. And I was like, wow, I really need to start doing something about this. And I slowly started to start the path towards health again. However, there's 2 big pivotal moments, one in 2014, but let me skip ahead to around 2017. I was diagnosed with diabetes, actually. And that was a big kick in the butt. Oh, wow. It ran in my family, so I expected it, but not this soon. So that hit me like a baseball bat. And I was all right. Yeah, I really need to kick it in gear. So I really kicked it into gear, and I've been prioritizing my self-care ever since. And I've reversed diabetes 100% naturally.
Wow. Congratulations. When you say kicking it into gear, be curious to get a learning lesson from you on what was that you did to kick it into gear?
Sure. In 2014, to take a step back, I got into Chinese Qigong, and we can talk more about that if you're interested. And that was a great way to relieve stress. That's one of the aspects, a huge contributor to all kinds of disease conditions, as we know about. That's nothing new, and with diabetes especially. But in 2017, when I received that diagnosis, one of the first things I did was really pick up the physical activity of strength training. Going in at least twice a week, lifting weights. It's really good because the more you build lean muscle mass, it burns up blood sugar, it helps regulate it. Also, diet. I changed my diet, much healthier diet, high protein, less carbs, less fat. Then started to work on sleep, also working on steps, getting more daily steps in. It's just a combination of things through the Qigong practice to mitigate stress, healthy eating, strenuous activity through exercise. It's a war that needs to be fought on all fronts. And I have to say, it all made sense when I received that diagnosis because I was crashing out in the afternoon. And then when I get home, as entrepreneurs, we don't stop. We just keep going. And after dinner and having dinner with my family, I'd go on the couch and start doing some work. And I found myself crashing like at 8 o'clock for a couple hours. I wake up like, wow, this is strange. I never do this. Why? And that was just one of the things, foggy brain, just burning out. And that's why I say be of service to self so you can be of service to others for a lifetime. Because otherwise you're just going to burn out. And what good is that?
What would you say to entrepreneurs who would say, that's all well and good for you, Craig, but I don't have time to do that stuff?
That's great. That's such a great question because I thought about it when I was like, what am I going to do about this? And there's an old Taoist saying there, I believe Lao Tzu stated it. Saying you don't have time is the same thing as saying I don't want to. And it's really a mindset shift that you need to, if you have that coming up into your mind, it's just an excuse. We all have excuses. And it's really taking your mind and shifting it into taking action. And what I was super busy. I had all kinds of things going on at the time. Our company was on the 5th year of being on Inc. 5,000 fastest growing private companies in the country, that list. And just really super busy with work and juggling family and so forth. So I said, all right, the only way I'm going to do this is if I get up really early. So I started waking up at 4:20 in the morning and getting to the gym by 5 and taking care of my workout for the hour and then getting ready. And because by the time 7 a.m. came along, the whole world's like on you. Staff, other family stuff, it's just nonstop. And that's just what I had to do.
And today you work in 3 areas, really: executive leadership, brand development, and marketing communications. Why did you select those 3 things? You could have selected IT advancement. I mean, there are a whole bunch of words in business that you could have picked and a whole bunch of categories that are important in business that you could have picked. Why those 3?
Sure. Yeah, to those 3 really based on my experience, really over the 26 years of running a digital marketing agency, marketing communications with an emphasis on digital experiences. That's what we did. I could have used the word like digital transformation. I just like to have a more umbrella term, marketing communications, because there's all kinds of aspects to marketing communications, not just digital. But the emphasis is on digital brand development because that was part of what we did. And I like that work. It's interesting work, actually. Then leadership development is really just based on my experience as CEO running a company and having a track record of success, Inc. 5,000, also got best places to work 4 years in a row as well with the company and leading to a successful exit. Started the company with just $1,300 in a computer and just grew it the old fashioned way. And it's just that track record of success. I have a lot to share. So that's why those 3 areas I have a lot to share.
I think brand and marketing definitely overlap, but I think they often are used synonymously and they are not the same thing. I think a lot of entrepreneurs look at brand development and marketing communication as, well, isn't marketing communication brand development? You just do a whole bunch of consistent marketing communication and that's my brand. So can you differentiate those 2?
Sure. It's marketing communications I like to frame it up as it's taking an active approach to communicating in a consistent manner to your target audiences as to what you have to offer, right? But from a brand standpoint and a brand strategy standpoint, you really have to define who you are and what you stand for and what you value, right? And all those marketing communications need to reflect that. In an ideal world, you really would start defining your brand and then have the marketing communications reinforce that. In an ideal world, a lot of times people, myself included, did a logo, a name, and cool, you get out and start doing marketing stuff. But through my own experience, when we really started to look at our brand and define our brand and who we were and what we stood for, it changed everything. It just was so much more effective for us.
So, Craig, just along those lines, a rich asked, just to make sure I understand the format. If you said, hey, I'm a brand and marketing specialist, I'd be like, okay, got it. But I don't know too many brand and marketing specialists that are also have leadership in there for whatever reason. I know a lot of digital marketing experts, and they're like, hey, we do brand marketing, maybe some sales, but it's the first time I actually see leadership intertwined there. Can you explain why that one is so important to you and why that one's there?
Yeah, and you're absolutely correct. It is a little different, right? You usually don't see them coupled. And again, it's really just what I feel I bring value to the table from my experience and what I want to share with people. And I have that value to bring. And the reason why I'm able to have these two kind of more separate components is the fact that I was the CEO and ran a digital marketing agency. So we are all about marketing, brand and marketing. And I led the company from nothing to having a successful exit to a world-class digital creative agency. And there's all kinds of experience there as a leader that I have to offer. So it's really based. It's not necessarily, oh, I studied and have a degree in leadership, blah, 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 blah. It's experience based, and I have a lot of value to bring. And I like it. And that there's actually an aspect to my Qigong practice that was a game changer for me in running my company. And that's a whole other area that's very unique and different that I like to bring to the table and offer something unique to people.
Oh, okay. So, Rich, I don't know if you're hearing what I'm hearing, but I've heard I have a lot to share in these areas. I have a lot of value to add. So we definitely need to jump into those three categories and maybe put you on the spot a little bit here, Craig, and be like, okay, what are the 5 things you need to share on leadership? What are the 5 things you need to share here and here? But you've also talked about this Qigong practice a couple of times. I almost feel like we should start there because you opened the door earlier if we wanted to learn a little bit more about it. Rich, do you know anything about Qigong practice?
I've heard of it. I know one of our franchise owners who practices it, but I know very little.
Okay. I need to understand a little bit more about this guy. I couldn't articulate what it is, and you've opened the door, so I'm going to walk right through it. Please tell us what this is and why should entrepreneurs care?
Okay, very good. So Qigong is an ancient Chinese practice of working with energy. It literally means energy skill or life force energy skill. So Qi is what the Chinese culture referred to as life force energy. And then Gong is skill, right? So it's working with energy. And there's all kinds of different cultures from around the world that work with energy and different modalities and so forth. Yoga is a great practice that if you really get into it, there's a lot of energetic aspects to it. So Qigong is from the Chinese culture, and it involves integrating the mind, body, and breath through a variety of simple exercises that look similar to Tai Chi. A lot of people get it mixed up with Tai Chi when they see it. And then there's also static meditation as well. And for me, it was a game changer in running my company. In 2014, I was really off-centered and out of balance with myself from all the stress and demands of running an organization. Again, Inc. 5000, multiple years in a row, clients, employees, vendors, family life, all these demands, obligations, responsibilities. It's just, it can get to you at times, right? And I was fortunate enough to come across a gentleman that was a Qigong practitioner named Russ Anderson, great guy. And I went to see him. I was referred over to him, and I went to see him once a month for 6 months. And after 6 months, I found myself feeling so much more centered and balanced. And at that point, he said, hey, you want to learn how to do this work? And I said, absolutely. So I actually started studying under him over 9 years ago. And it's a huge deal because I just heard Deloitte put out a study, and maybe they do this every year, but I think the statistic is somewhere around it's at least 20%. I forget the exact number. I just saw this yesterday of executives suffer with depression. And then there's like another like 30% that suffer with anxiety and more. It's huge. And when you're suffering, or maybe suffering is too harsh of a word, but when you are experiencing these types of emotions, how effective can you really be as a leader? How good is your decision making ability when you have high anxiety and you're under duress and more triggered, more tense? You know, when you're calm, it's just part of what I talk about in my book, Business Kung Fu. When you're in the fight and you're calm, you're much more effective. And the same thing comes where Qigong really helps you remain centered and balanced so you can be more effective.
Yeah. And sorry, I just want to get, you said 60% of entrepreneurs suffer with anxiety. And did you say 30% depression? Or?
And I think it's around 22%.
Okay.
And then I think it's more like 30%, I think, is anxiety. I just saw this yesterday.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm in a doctorate program for Chinese energy medicine, and my thesis is the impact of Qigong on business professionals. And I need to dig up this study because I just came across it, and I'm going to incorporate it into my thesis, actually. So
Yeah.
I'll go down the road, but it's very interesting. It's a mental health study that they're like, that's a name. It might be something they do every year from based on what I just saw yesterday.
I love that. And certainly a lot of the reasons I guess I would hypothesize that entrepreneurs have that anxiety or depression, they just keep running. And sometimes they're just running in quicksand, and they're just trying to get going, trying to get it figured out. And they take 2 steps forward and it's 2 steps back, and they're all over the place. And to just be able to center yourself, to be able to see what's going on in the midst of all these things that are going on in your life and in your business and everything else. I see that being very big.
Absolutely. Because when you're operating a business, on any given day, there's all kinds of demands and pressures. Your staff that keep coming to you with their problems, and everyone's well intended, but through my experience, there's this habit of team members coming to you and wanting you to solve their problems, as opposed to, hey, work through it. And at times they get stuck, and you need to help them and be available, sure, but it's just ongoing, right? And then there's fires to put out if someone makes a mistake. A client doesn't do something right, you got to correct that behavior, or someone on the team doesn't do something right and the client is upset. You got to step in, right? There's just so many things that you have to attend to that times can be really highly emotionally charged situations, which adds to the stress and pressures to a situation that already inherently has stress and pressure. So there's all these different situations that can bring up frustration, irritation, which that resides in the liver, actually, from a Chinese energy medicine perspective. People that get into depression because things aren't going their way, it's just like they're struggling and running, but they're not getting anywhere, right? Depression sets in, or nervousness. Oh my God, am I going to make payroll? I've been there. I've been over all this stuff. And as entrepreneurs, that's just what we have to contend with.
Do you do coaching of executives on Qigong specifically and teach them how to do it? Is that one of the things that you provide?
So one thing that I do currently today is I actually am a practitioner where I have a lot of professional people. I have all kinds of different people that come to see me, but a lot of professional people come to see me. And I like to work with them because I'm very relatable to them because of my background and experience. They actually come to me. I had a session just a little bit ago, actually, from an executive that works in the marketing industry, and I do the actual energy work with them. I have been experimenting with doing some workshop formats and also some masterminds, leading people through some Qigong exercises and meditations this year. And that's been going really well. And that's something that I want to plan on doing more. With my consulting practice, it's been a lot more of the marketing and brand work. The leadership stuff is a little bit going to be more coming forward more and more as I get through my doctorate program, and I'm defining all these approaches on how to package it up. So I'm like early on, because I just left my company 2 years ago and took a year off and just started back up. And I've been very busy with getting the book out, working through this doctorate program, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
So if an entrepreneur said, hey, I heard about this Qigong thing from Craig, and I'd love to learn more about it and look up what's the time commitment and how does it work? And can you share just a touch more on that? And if somebody was practicing Qigong, How long does it take? And is it a per day thing?
Yes, and it doesn't have to be a huge sacrifice of time, actually.
Knowing all entrepreneurs are stretched for time, what's a minimum amount of time to see any benefit
20
over a
minutes a day.
period of time?
I'd say 20 minutes a day. And if someone can keep that up for a solid, let's say, 8 to 12 weeks, they should start noticing some differences just through a set of simple exercises that address the different organs. And the one in particular that I'm thinking about, it purges, tonifies, and regulates all the emotional aspects of the organs. 20 minutes. That's all it takes. When I first started studying, I learned those exercises. It would take me 20 minutes. I did those every day for a year and a half. And it's fantastic. And that was after I'd already had started feeling more centered and balanced because of the energy work. If you go see a practitioner, and depending upon the level and the degree, it could be once a week for 6 weeks and you can feel new, or maybe it's once a month for 6 months. Like that's what it was for me. So it just depends on what someone's willing to commit to. But the great thing is that you can do it yourself. But I would say 20 minutes a day. Give it a
And if I were going to do it, do I need to go slip on some athletic shorts, or can I do it in my professional attire?
You can do it in your professional attire because the movements are so simple. It looks like Tai Chi, but it's not as sophisticated as Tai Chi when it comes to the actual movements, because Tai Chi has the martial applications to it because it's the actual martial art. So Qigong movements tend to be much more simple, actually.
Okay. Thanks for sharing on that end. I want to dive into the executive leadership side. I know you had said, hey, it's not like I went to school for it. I have a lot of experience and I have a lot to offer in it. I imagine over your experience, there are at least some models or philosophies or someone who you might follow, or what would be an example of a model or a philosophy that your practice and in your experience, you say, hey, this works and I work with entrepreneurs on it?
Great question. So my book is the philosophy that I am preaching, if you want to say that, based on my experience. And I have a model in there called the 5 elements of entrepreneurship. And it's borrowed from Chinese 5-element theory. And this comes from my study of martial arts and Qigong. 5-element theory permeates Chinese culture, from martial arts to medical systems to spiritual systems to food, music, etc. And the 5 elements in the classic Chinese model is fire, earth, water, metal, and wood. And it's all about the constitution of those elements in any given thing and how those elements are balanced, right? The mixture and the balance of those. Borrowing upon that, I identified 5 elements of entrepreneurship that lead to success. And that is passion. I like to start with passion. It could start from anywhere, but let's say passion, right? Passion leads to discipline. Discipline leads to expertise. Expertise leads to confidence. And confidence leads to faith. And there's this generative cycle where each element leads to the next and builds the potential and capacity of those elements. But then it could also reverse, like a weakening cycle, where you start to lose an aspect, it starts to diminish other prior elements, and it's like a downward spiral. So you can upward spiral, a downward spiral. And then also there's interrelationships between the elements that can have positive or negative impacts on each other as well. There could be excess conditions of an element, say such as confidence, and there could be deficient aspects, right? And it has impacts on these other elements within. So it's all about developing these elements and then maintaining a balance. And if you get knocked out of balance, as life always does, throw us sucker punches and knocks us off balance, how quickly can you get back to balance and maintain that balance?
How does one know where they are, whether they're in balance or not, on each of the 5 and the 5 in harmony? Is there an assessment? Is there a self-assessment? Do you just check in on it? How would you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. And that's actually something I was working through an entrepreneurial business group last month at a speaking event I was doing. And at the moment, it's the way I'm walking people through that. It's a lot of introspection, self-reflection, assessment, self-assessment. I do plan on coming up with something like a model that's a little easier and quicker to self-assessment test in a sense. But just having self-reflective questions like, what are you passionate about? What do you do for a career to make money? Is there a high interest in that? Or what is the reason that you're there? Why are you doing what you're doing? Is it chasing money and that's what you're interested in? Or is there truly a higher purpose that you're serving that is really feeding your soul? Is there true passion there or not? And then discipline. Do you consider yourself a disciplined person? Why? Or why not? At this point, I would recommend people with this model to really ask a bunch of questions and go within and be honest with yourself. And then from there, okay, what do I need to develop? And then it gets to how do you develop those things? And if there's something that's a little too much, then okay, like confidence, right? Too much confidence leads to what? Arrogance, right?
Craig, some of these really can connect with and understand. I think like 4 of the 5 of them, as I'm thinking through them, like what you just said, like you have too much confidence or you're missing it, right? You have to have the right balance of these different things. What would be the self-assessment questions though for faith? I don't know if I connect with that one as much. I have some self-assessment questions. Am I passionate what I'm doing? Am I disciplined? Then I get to faith and I'm questioning, if I was to self-assess myself, what questions should I be asking myself on that one?
Yes. Do you believe in yourself?
Wouldn't that be confidence?
It's like confidence on steroids.
Okay.
Like confidence is, and again, this is just based on my experience and how my perspective and viewpoint of the world, right? And the way I explain it is that expertise leads to confidence, because when you're really good at something, when you develop mastery, you're really on top of your game and you're excellent, you become very confident, right? You're very sure. But faith is a whole other level. What faith is, faith allows you to overcome, allows you to overcome your biggest challenges. And as entrepreneurs, we are put to the test many times. It's the hardest thing I've ever
internal strength almost, right? You have that internal strength in the face of adversity to make it through because you have that much faith.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. By the way, I love how you use the 5 Chinese elements and related them. I really love that. I look forward to reading about those. I'm definitely going to get that book. And I think in addition to learning Qigong, I need to get this. So cool. I want to test your Qigong. By the way, one of the best compliments I ever got as an entrepreneur was when an employee said to me, John, I feel like I could walk in here and tell you the building's on fire. And you'd be like, okay, what do you think we should do? Everybody's running with their hair cut off, running out of the building. And that's a skill set that Rich and I both, in one of our first jobs right out of college, had to really learn how to regulate our emotional state and our mood and everything else. It's a skill set that's really paid dividends throughout our careers. But I just wanted to challenge you just for a second from the perspective of, I want to ask you some quick hits.
Sure.
And challenge you to regulate your mood as you're answering these real fast as it's coming at you. But with both brand and marketing, if you were to just bullet point them and go, I have a wealth of knowledge in branding and I have a wealth of knowledge in marketing communications, what are the top 5 things in brand and the top 5 things in marketing that you would say are the most important for entrepreneurs to learn and master?
Let's start with brand. So with brand, there's 2 main things you need to define and articulate, and that is the verbal expression of your brand and then the visual expression of your brand.
Okay.
Let's count that as one, as the bullet, right? Because they're both important, right? Now, with the verbal expression of your brand, you need to really define what you stand for, what your purpose is, what your mission is, your vision, and also your values, your personality characteristics. There's all of these aspects of defining what you stand for under that verbal expression. Okay. So that's bullet number 2. It's a long bullet, sorry. But,
all right, no, it's fine.
Then with the visual expression, all that needs to reinforce that verbal expression. Visually, how does your visual language reinforce what you say and what you stand for? And that's through shape, form, color, texture, behavior, especially in a digital world, is form, meaning, and behavior all coming in to bring a brand experience, right? And so that visual aspect needs to reinforce. So that's bullet number 3, right? Bullet number 4 is you really do need to think about the overall brand experience. And is that experience aligned internally in your organization and externally in the marketplace? You might be aligned internally, but for some reason you're not delivering it to the marketplace and it's out of alignment, right? And then 5, there's a bunch of things in my mind that I could say, oh, this or this, but I would say, I think this is more important, that it needs to be natural. It needs to become natural. And that's where you have what I refer to as a code. And think of it as more of like a positive affirmation model that you employ. And as long as you have these types of characteristics, how you define it under that approach, everything becomes natural. It's like riding a bike. It's not forced, so that your daily behaviors are always being consistent with that model, and everything will take care of itself.
Yeah, it almost becomes a habit. It becomes just the way that things roll. Okay, great job. Let's go next. Marketing communications. I'm digging this. 5 things on marketing communications entrepreneurs need to figure out, master, do, whatever category you'd like to go down there.
Yeah, excellent. So 1 is reinforcing the brand, right? Really effectively reinforcing the brand, right? Because if your marketing communications are off brand, what are you doing? It's not right. That's 1. Also 2, a strategy first approach. A lot of people chase the shiny object, implementing a tactic. Oh, this is the thing to do today. This is hot, right? All right, cool. Might get lucky and get some quick success, but what about long-term success, right? And a lot of times people don't take the time to define a strategy, and it's critical. It's critical to success. Okay. And number 3, in this day and age, it needs to be an integrated experience, right? It needs to be an integrated approach where you're not just relying on one thing, and you define your strategy through using a multitude of channels, online and offline, integrated together. So all these different components are working in conjunction with each other to attain business goals and objectives, but also satisfy audience needs under a watchful eye of feasibility. That was a model that I employed with my company, that when we brought solutions to the table for clients, that was the solution, business goals and objectives, audience needs, but also feasibility. Is it going to break a budget, this solution, or is it actually feasible because it's going to be executed within a certain budget or time period? That integrated approach. Okay. 4, I would say it's really the emphasis on experience. The age of interruption marketing is past, and it's much more about experience and even gaining permission to have that experience. Email was a great way of where that started. And with all the concerns about privacy and apps tracking your every move and everything, the opt-ins, all this stuff is always being brought to the surface now. And everyone now with AI and all that and privacy concerns, there's going to be just more and more around that protection. And hey, I want to raise my hand and opt into all this tracking and communication. There's that. And then 5, I would say AI, just because, not groundbreaking here, but just because of how fast it's going, it's changing everything, is how AI is going to be leveraged to execute effective marketing, but more efficiently.
Oh, that's massive. It's moving very fast. You did a great job navigating those 5 on the spot as challenged.
Yeah.
So
this is fun. This is cool. Yeah, you haven't had people challenge me like this. This is great. It's like being in a fight.
And you were very calm. Your practice of staying calm. And you know what I was impressed with? You started with, here are the 2 things on brand, and then you made sure to get to 3, 4, and 5. You didn't do 2 or 3 because those are your canned things. John asked for 5. You did 5 on each. Yeah. That was excellent.
Oh,
thank you so much for being on with us today. A wealth of knowledge. Absolutely. If people want to get more of you, how would you like them to go about it?
Well, thank you. I appreciate both of you guys. Thank you so much. So there's 2 great ways to get a hold of me. One is through my website, which is c-squaredpro.io. So it's the letter C, squared spelled out, pro.io. And then also LinkedIn, on LinkedIn/in/Craig Cooke. That's Cooke with an E at the end of Cooke. I monitor both those channels daily. So if someone wants to get a hold of me, those two methods are the best. People can find me on social media and all that stuff too. But those two locations are the best way to get a hold of me the quickest.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us, Craig.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, one other little quick thing. If someone wants to get my book, it's on Amazon. It's on Amazon, available in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle format. And you can just Google it and it'll come up, or go to Amazon and search Business Kung Fu. It'll come up.
Very good. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Craig.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
Stay tuned as John and Rich unpack today's conversation.
John, with my recent health changes in the last year and a half, I was really digging where Craig was coming from, where unfortunately he had to hit diabetes in 2017. And I've told you, I feel like I dodged a bullet. I don't have diabetes. I don't have a bad back. I don't have bad knees. I dodged a bullet at my age to have lost and gained 80 to 100 pounds 3 times in my life, and I have no repercussions from it. However, Craig did.
Yeah.
And he had diabetes, and that forced him to do some of the things that we learned at the retreat last year from Dr. Greg Kapp. Was it Greg Kapp? No,
Bill Kapp. Greg Kapp's somebody else we know,
you.
But this was Bill Kapp.
And it was strength training was one of the number one things he talked about with longevity.
100%.
It was strength training was the thing. And I love where Craig went to next. He said, and then it's diet, higher protein, lower fat and carbs. And then he did some walking and then focused on his sleep. That also ties into another guest that we had that said the 3 things that he works on with entrepreneurs were eating, sleeping, and moving. He's like, that's it. That's the whole health formula. Eating, sleeping, and moving. Some derivation of it. So I really enjoyed that part of the conversation.
Yeah, be of service to self, to serve others. And you're right. Last year at the Entrepreneurs United Empowerment Experience in Austin, we had Dr. Bill Kapp. And the one thing I remember from him, I think everybody took it away, is he said to the whole audience, there's 50 entrepreneurs there, he said, if there's one thing that you guys could do to make sure you live longer and live healthier, it's strength training.
Yeah.
It's muscle.
Yeah.
It's not running down the street. It's literally picking up some weights and doing some strength training. And the fact that's exactly what Craig was talking about. I wrote that down on my sheet of paper here. Yeah. Exactly where you went. And we didn't even talk about it during the episode with Craig. It was exactly what I took away. And I'll tell you one other thing. Actually, Dr. Bill Kapp is from Fountain Life, which is a company with Tony Robbins. And recently, they do an annual preemptive checkups where you go do all the body scans and they give you prescribed things you should be doing. I know somebody very close to me that just went to do that at Fountain Life. And the biggest feedback they got was strength training. So just another exclamation point. If you're not doing any strength training to put on the muscle mass, it's really important. It helps support your bones. Your bones know that your muscle's working. So your bones get stronger. Everything gets stronger. So really important. But if I had to transition here,
before you transition though, John, at the risk of overplaying the conversation around this with Bill Kapp, did you hear Craig say Qigong was life force energy? And I thought, oh, that's interesting because Bill Kapp did the book Life Force with Tony Robbins. Like, it's just interesting how things come together.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, that book was called Life Force. That's a great point. But I was actually going to go there because there was an episode we did, Rich, that somewhat changed my life. And it was Dr. Julie Bell. And it was the easiest thing that she brought to us in our audience. It was a start every day with a blank sheet of paper for 20 minutes and journal. Just write whatever comes to your mind. And if you recall, at the end of that conversation, I was like, let's try that, Rich. In this exact debrief, we said, I'm going to try that. I've been doing it ever since. Now I'm not on a sheet of paper. Now I'm on my little Remarkable pad. But I literally journal for 20 minutes most days with a blank sheet of paper. And I just write down. It changed the way I thought. It changed ideas that came to mind. Now I'm thinking about Qigong and thinking, I've never really gotten the practice of meditation, but I want to research this a little bit more based on what we got today from Craig. It seems very interesting. I want to learn more about it.
Well, I practiced meditation on a regular basis, and now I do not regularly, but I know how to, and I do several times a week. But originally, when I got trained on meditation, it was 20 minutes twice a day. So I'm particularly intrigued about 20 minutes once a day.
Yeah.
And something to incorporate movement with the mind. So I'm with you on wanting to know a little bit more about that. Another thing I wrote down and I highlighted was, interestingly, he could have been the person that we learned it from 25 years ago on the response to somebody saying, I don't have time. There is no I don't have time. You have time. You're just picking to not do it.
Prioritization.
And that's not only with exercise, but that's with even finding a consultant like Craig. That's with focusing on brand, where you're trying to just go get leads. And I don't have time to focus on brand. We all have time. It's a matter of priorities. And if we're not doing it, just let's own it and say it's not a priority to me, because we have the time. We all have the same amount of time.
Yeah. And that's why I believe the title of this podcast has to be of service to self to serve others. Because if you do prioritize your self-care, you do prioritize taking care of yourself, sharpening your saw, becoming a better leader, and take the time to do those things when it seems impossible to do those because you're so busy running your business and doing everything else. If you take the time to do those things, you will be better at all the things that you do, whether it be parenting, your relationships, your leadership skills. Everything will get better. Everything will become more streamlined. It will just empower you to be a better leader, which kind of goes back to that faith part, right? When you talk about those 5 elements of entrepreneurship: passion, discipline, expertise, confidence, and faith. And there's a lot of ways to have passion in something, but you're overworked in it and you start getting fatigued and your passion level starts coming down. And so the way to keep those all operating at a high, all 5 of them, is to really take care of self first. I love that whole conversation, how it really encompasses the whole thing.
I really appreciated you asking him about brand and marketing. I went down that line a bit, asking him to differentiate the two, and he sure did by nailing 5 things within each. What I'll highlight is the 4th piece he went to on brand, which was brand experience. What I loved about what he said next is he differentiated the brand experience internally versus externally. I think so often entrepreneurs, when they think of the brand experience, they think of a paying customer, not necessarily the brand experience of an employee, of someone who's working within one's brand. And having to balance a good brand experience both internally and externally, because there are also companies that focus too much internally and that brand isn't defined very well externally. So I love that differentiation and that highlight of the internal and external brand experience.
Yeah, and speaking of experience, this September, Charleston, South Carolina, the 2nd annual, maybe 3rd annual, it depends on where you're at in that argument, 3rd annual Entrepreneurs United Empowerment Experience. And I'm thinking, Rich, at that event in Charleston in September, maybe we need to implement a morning Qigong. What do you think about that?
I like it. And we may want to invite a practitioner. Maybe by that time, Craig will have incorporated that into his practice. Maybe we can invite him.